Welcome to Brace Y'all. My name is Noah Kavanaugh. In today's video, we are talking about why you don't need to be the best at your sport in order to create an unbelievable and profitable personal brand. Let's jump into it. So the context for today's video is all about Ben Foster, who is also known as the Cycling GK. He was involved in Wrexham and Manchester United, Watford, and a bunch of other Premier League clubs over the course of his professional football career. He played at a very good level, but was never considered one of the best goalkeepers in the world. And I want to show you his example and some principles and lessons we can take from his career that he's still in order to help you guys in your personal branding journey as athletes. And as a quick disclaimer, obviously Ben Foster had access to elite level locker rooms and was paid a Premier League salary for many years and has done very well for himself outside of his personal brand and in his playing career. But the principles here still apply to people like myself as a lower division professional soccer player and yourself as well as maybe not the best in your particular sport or field. So as a bit of history for Foster, he grew up in England playing for several different academy teams, bounced around the English Premier League for many years playing for teams at his very peak like Manchester United in their prime, as well as Watford and a couple other places. This led to the COVID era where he was almost about to retire. He was playing for Watford at the time, and he started a YouTube channel about behind the scenes content of what being in the locker room and on pitch actually looked like. And I want to show you visually what that actually looks like and how he was able to teach us the first strategy, which is fill a void in the market. So fill the gap. And I want to show you how. So if we look at our whiteboard here and we think about the English Premier League, the EPL, and there are a bunch of people who are interested in watching the EPL, right? Everybody around the world who is watching these games is super, super keen to watch games and to consume the content, go to matches, etc. The problem with 2020 is what happened is a thing called COVID, which created a massive barrier to these eyeballs getting to the games. Obviously, before then, we didn't really have a lot of BTS content, and because people actually couldn't go to the matches, it created this interesting atmosphere around the games. If you guys remember from 2019, 2020, 2021, there were games that we would see online that were in completely empty stadiums. It was really interesting from a player perspective because you could actually hear the communication on the pitch, and that was like a cool aside. But generally speaking, games became less interesting to watch because there wasn't as much fans. What Ben did is Ben comes along, Ben F, and he breaks through this barrier by creating a YouTube channel. And the cool thing about this is this created a basically one-of-one experience for viewers to go on his channel and watch from the goalpost. He would literally put a GoPro in the goal so that you could watch Premier League games from sort of behind the scenes, and you were able to get this really interesting behind the scenes look at what a Premier League match actually looked like. This was maybe a little bit different than the eagle-eye view of the game that we're used to, but it was a little more intimate, just like the emotionality of watching a game with a ton of fans. Strategy number 2 that Ben's story can teach us is starting before you need it. Now, this is a really interesting situation that I talk about a lot from a personal branding perspective, and we can see it here visually as well. I've talked about this a lot before, but on the top we have our time frame. So as time moves on in our life, this is what it looks like from left to right. Then right below it, we have our personal brand. So PB, our personal brand. Oops, PP. PB, our personal brand. Our personal brand stays with us our entire life because it's the digitization of our reputation or who we are as a person, right? So who we are as a person. That's a parentheses, not an L. And then underneath it, with a little bit of separation, Ben had his football career here. He obviously has family as well. So family. And then right about here, he creates his personal brand / his YouTube channel. And what this does is this gap between the football career and the personal brand becomes the buffer so that he has his cash he's making from the football career and the purpose and the meaning and the sort of the answer to the question, what do you do? And he's got that overlap with his podcast, the Cycling GK. He's got his YouTube channel, and he's got his connections that he's building in the media world. This is really applicable to any of you guys who are current athletes, and I would strongly suggest starting now, whether it's a YouTube channel, an Instagram page, posting a bunch on LinkedIn, start to build your social profile, your social presence, and your authority in a particular space that you're interested in, even if it's just your sport as well, because it will pay off as you retire. I had the exact same situation like this. In fact, my map looks almost identical to this, except maybe this period was a little bit further this way, so it's a slightly larger overlap, which is necessary for somebody like me who doesn't have the immediate credibility of a former Premier League player. Strategy number 3 we can learn is platform diversification as leverage. I always talk about picking a Halo platform, maybe a second Halo, depending on if you have access to other people helping you out with content, and then you pick 1 or 2 satellite platforms so it's not super overwhelming. Again, the content that goes from your Halo platform to your satellite platform should simply be a redistribution. It's not actually recreating that content. In Foster's case, I want to show you a couple of the ones that he has going on. So in one circle here, it'll be kind of like a Venn diagram. He's got his YouTube channel, which is called the Cycling GK. Then down here, he's got the podcast, which is called the Fozcast. He also has short form and a membership website. So each one of these 3 kind of core platforms, and then obviously he has short form as well. But over here on the Cycling GK is goalkeeper stuff and cycling stuff and personal stuff. It's very personal, vloggy style content. The podcast is high profile guests, football talk, and Foz's personal stories. And this podcast is done with a bunch of very, very high profile guests who have been on, guys like Rio Ferdinand and other very, very high profile guests. Then the membership website is BTS content mostly. And then you've got other kind of perks of being in the Fozcast world or the Ben Foster world. This middle section is obviously a representation of the personal brand. And each one of these has its own sort of ecosystem, but they feed into each other. And so he's got diversification across different platforms. And what this does is it gives him stability. So if his YouTube channel, maybe his views are waning or he can't create a particular YouTube video that particular week, he's got the stability of both the Fozcast and his membership or short form content and vice versa. Now, this type of thing is obviously great on paper. It's much harder to do in person. So what I would highly recommend, like what I did, is if we look at here, I've got my membership website, so I'll do everything in red that I have. This is my school community. That's free. The YouTube was my first priority or Halo platform. And then I also had a podcast for a little while, but instead I would say shorts are my kind of third deal / LinkedIn. And so what I like to do is I like to focus 100% of my energy or 80% of my energy on YouTube. This then gets redistributed, and then this gets redistributed, and these sort of talk to each other. And the reason I do that is because number 1, I now have a small team that I work with or who work for me or work with me, and it gives me the holistic view of how do I redistribute and repurpose content. So from a Ben Foster perspective, this is an excellent model that he has going on right now. Strategy 4 from Ben Foster is collaboration over competition. Now he's partnered with guys like the Sidemen, Chris MD, people with millions and millions of subscribers. And because he can leverage his Premier League title, he's able to get on those types of channels and collaborate with those types of people because he already has the clout or the aura or whatever the kids nowadays say, in order to get on those types of channels. But using that instead of going all in his own shell and staying set in a competition mindset sets him apart from other creators because he's able to collaborate and get bigger and bigger with these other guys as well. One thing that I've done that you guys can do as well is to look at people in your niche with 10% or more of a following or more impact. Message them and see if you can provide some value to that person, whether it's a conversation, some value that you can give to their audience for free, or some other type of value exchange so that that person is interested in having a conversation with you and potentially collaborating. There will be those offhanded examples where you become really close friends with somebody who's astronomically larger than you, but don't count on that being the case. Treat this as a business transaction. You provide a little bit more than what's necessary in terms of value, and that collaboration can happen. Strategy number 5 is using controversy as clarification. In 2022, the Watford president made some very public comments about how he did not support Ben Foster's use of the GoPro and the behind-the-scenes content. What this did was actually clarify Foster's brand, so much so that he got an amazing contract at Wrexham, and that absolutely catapulted his career in terms of his following and his public image. And speaking more literally, when people start to hate on you, that means that what you're doing is working. You should not take that as a sign that you should stop and cower and not create content anymore, or stop building your personal brand and promoting yourself. It's actually the opposite. As soon as people start hating on you, I always joke with my friends, I say, hey, when you guys get your first hate comment, that means you are making progress in this game, because when more people pay attention to you, inevitably some percentage are going to hate on you, even though that person is probably sitting in their parents' basement typing on a keyboard, right? They don't matter. It doesn't matter. What Foster did was such a great example that I actually had in my own career with the transition from Michigan Stars to Flower City, which is where he got axed by Watford because he was doing all the filming stuff and he was creating his own brand, and the president didn't like him as much, and yada yada. Similar thing that happened to me at Michigan Stars. You take that, you double down on it because you know intuitively it is working. But there's a reason why Wrexham, Ryan Reynolds actually chose Ben Foster as opposed to a different goalkeeper that might have been technically more gifted, if you will. He had a personal brand, and Wrexham, with their Netflix documentary and things like that, needed somebody like that, having a big personality, behind the goal footage, BTS. It was another angle of the Wrexham story. And this is really important because Flower City, same exact thing. If you guys want a good look at what the 2023 season looked like, go to my channel, watch those videos. Yes, it circled around what I was doing, but I'm just a character in the greater story. There are so many amazing players that were for that Flower City team as there were for Ben Foster's Wrexham team. We are just adding to that creative story that becomes in fans' mind the thing you think about when you think about that particular team. And speaking of Wrexham, this is number 6, and that is the masterstroke of what Wrexham brought to Ben Foster's career and what Ben Foster brought to Wrexham. Having a personal brand as a player means that he was able to turbocharge the growth of Wrexham with all the Premier League fans and see this sort of Cinderella story of coming through the ranks up to the Premier League. They're now in the second division of England, the Championship, which is absolutely amazing. In the last 3 or 4 years, they've climbed the table every single year. You take that into my context with Flower City, and we got last place when I played for Flower City the second half of the 2022 season. We were literally dead last. Then the next year, we got a great coach and a bunch of really good players as well, and we won a national title. That's a complete flip-flop. It's the same story that Wrexham has. The reason for that is because you build your team around personalities who, yes, are really good on the pitch, but some of them also have personal brands, and they're able to bring the club up with them. Even though Foster retired a year ago, he's now a club ambassador traveling all over the world with the Wrexham shirt on. I actually got a chance to personally meet the guy several months ago when he was at Ultra Football here in Melbourne, and I was filming the entire event and sort of hosting the event. I was like on the microphone and doing those types of things. Ben's a really interesting guy, and he's really smart, and he's really genuine when you talk to him. He's a great human being. And so seeing that in real life and seeing, hey, this is the guy that I watched on YouTube back in COVID era, and also him wearing the Wrexham kit with all the Wrexham players, it's this unbelievable welding of two different worlds that can build each other. And I think that's going to become a lot of what the new model of football is going to look like. And thanks to guys like Ben Foster, this is now possible. And what I'm saying to you and my whole business model is built on things that he keyed in on around the same time that I did, which is players with personal brands are far more valuable to organizations than players without. So what does this whole story actually prove? Well, there's 3 milestones that us at Brace, we work with our clients on, and that is clarity, so you know who you are, which was principle 5. So that is doubling down on the thing you know you're really good at, regardless of the hate, and getting clear on your message. That's building authority, just like Ben Foster did in the cycling GK space. So not only as kind of a personal brand interested in cycling and football and other things, but connecting with really high profile guests on his podcast. And of course, leverage and leveraging that authority, which he's now done not only while he was a player at Wrexham, but now as the global ambassador for Wrexham as well. So marrying his personal brand with that organization. Clarity, authority, and leverage. And we see this across all of the best athlete personal brands, and that's what I'm trying to bring here with Brace. Stay dangerous, y'all. See you in the next one.